everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to play with some of our new beads here for you today, doing this Polar Star Pendant. It is a two-sided puffy pendant that we're actually going to be using some button beads, which are right here. They're a triangular shaped bead here with a hole at the bottom so that it sits flat side up. I'm also going to be changing it up and show you the newest item, which is the Spiky Button. It's the same thing, but it's bicone shape, and instead of being flat on the top, has a spike to it. I'm going to do one side with the spikes and with these blues and greens, and then the other side with the regular button beads rather than the spiky buttons, and we're going to do this in brighter tones in this pink and purple. So the reason it's polar is because one side is going to be one way, the other side wants to be something else. For this, if you need any materials, we're going to have a little drop down here on the left for you that you can click to any of the material lists that you need. Also, if you do need anything, underneath the video here, there's a little video description and there's a show more button. If you click that show more button, it'll drop down a menu for you and you'll be able to see the links to get these beads as well, either to write a list, to go to your local Potomac Bead Company store, or to purchase from us online. In addition to the spiky buttons and the buttons, we're also going to be using some seed beads and some SO beads. For this, I'm going to be using 30 SO beads on each side. So 60 altogether if you're doing it the same color of those SO beads. 30 of each color if you're doing two different colors. The SO beads, if you're unfamiliar with them, they're almost like a round SuperDuo. They're a little bit wider at the end and they're 5 millimeters. I'm going to be using the Crystal Labrador Fool on one side and the metallic silver on the other side. So I went with a shiny silver and a matte silver. When it comes to the spiky buttons, I'm using the matte Crystal Vitrol Fool, and they have a pretty rainbow tone to them. And again, they do have a hole at the bottom and then they stick straight up from the other side. On the other side, I'm going to be using the regular button bead as opposed to the spiky button, and this is the bright Crystal Vitrol. And for this, I'm going with the matte and the bright on this side and the opposite on the other side when you're working with them. You're going to use 7 of your spiky button and 7 of your button bead if you're going along with this tutorial as far as doing the different sides. If you want to do them all one side, you're just going to use 14, so that's up to you. On the side that has the spiky button, I'm going to be using the metallic blue mix in the 11-0, and then I'm using the lime lined Crystal AB in the 15-0. When I flip over to the other side and I'm using the button bead, I'm going to be using the 15-0 in this bright dyed transparent fuchsia color. And then I have the metallic eggplant color here that I'm using in the 11-0 seed bead. In addition to my beads, I'm also going to be using a size 10 beading needle. I have my Wildfire beading thread in a white color in 0.006. I'm working on my bead mat to catch all of my beads, and then I have my Wildfire cord cutter, which is a thread burner, here handy. In addition to that, you may want to have some SuperDuo glue and also a pair of pliers to help flatten out the thread to be able to thread your needle a little bit easier. We're going to start off by making one side of this, then we'll make the other side, and then we'll add them together and put a little bail on it. If you would want to, you could also make these as components to do a bracelet, so I'll stop along the way and explain to you how you would add them together to do a bracelet, or how you continue with the pendant or earring, depending on what you're making. I'm going to start with my spiky button side, so if you're starting with me, we're going to take out 30 of our SO bead. We're going to take out 7 of our spiky buttons, and then a little bit of our 11 and 15-0 that we're using on that side. I'm ready to start making the first side of my moon star here, or polar star, I'm sorry, and what I'm going to do is pick up and do basically peyote and a little bit of herringbone in the round. When I'm doing that, I have about 4 feet of beading thread here on my needle, and I've added a stop bead to my project. The stop bead is just a bead that's going to stop the others from falling out. I'm going through it one time, back around another, and yet another. So you're going to end up with two pieces of thread that you can see on the exterior. That's going to actually stop the beads from falling off the thread and hold the beads in place while I'm working on my project. The middle of this polar star here is going to start out by using 6 of my SO beads. Again, the SO beads are very similar to a SuperDuo, but just a little bit different in shape. They're a little bit more rounded rather than oval shape when it comes to those disc shape versus the SuperDuo, so the SO is a little bit more of a disc. When I'm working on these here, I'm going to separate each of these 6 starter beads out with an 11-0 seed bead. So I'm going to just alternate doing the 11s and the SO. I want to have the SOs end with an 11, so I make sure when I bring these 6 beads around into a circle that there's an 11-0 on each side, so there's no beginning or end. I'm going to push those beads to the bottom of my thread. I'm going to take my needle and thread, going around in a circle, coming out the end one, going back to the beginning here next to the stop bead. Don't go through the stop bead, but I'm going to go through 2 SOs, 2 11s, and come out one of my SO beads. So I'm coming out that 3rd SO bead that I added at the beginning. After I have my thread out of those beads, you can see that it becomes a little bit almost of a floral shape, that rounded star shape there going on. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add in my middle bead. To do that, I'm going to pick up one of my spiky button beads, and again they just have one hole, so you can kind of twist it around and find the hole. I'm going to sew through that bead, and what I'm going to do is go directly across to the last bead, that 6th bead, and I'm going to sew into that SO bead. This is going to pull the spiky button right into the middle of that loop that we just made. So you can see it's just going to kind of sit up there in that spiked fashion. Once I have that completed, I'm going to go through the seed bead next to the spiky button. I'm also going to go through the next SO bead and come out. So that's the first SO bead of my project that I'm coming out of. And which one you come out, it actually doesn't really matter. I'm then going to increase my starting area here. I'm going to increase and get further out. For the second row that I do, I'm going to add an 11 and an SO and an 11 between each of my SO beads. The SO beads, I'm going from the bottom hole here to the top hole on that same bead. So my thread's coming out the bottom hole. I'm going into the top hole, which is going to expose a little bit of thread on the side, but by the time I get the other beads in, you won't see it. Now I'm going to go around this circle that I've created, picking up an 11, an SO, and an 11, and sew through the next SO in line going through that second hole. I'm going to continue this pattern the whole way around, adding a seed bead, an SO, and a seed bead, and sewing into the next. Continuing around, I'm going to add 4 more SO beads in between each of the original 6. I'm now adding the 6th and final of my SO beads on the second pass, and I'm going to sew through that first SO that my thread was coming out of. At the same time, I'm going to sew through the 11-0 and the first SO that I put on in that second row that we just completed. Give a nice tight pull because you want it to curve a tiny bit. So you want that curvature to happen, because what's going to happen is everything's going to stick out and puff out a little bit. As I get to the next rotation, I'm going to sew through just to tighten it up a little bit more. Another 11, the first row of SO, another 11, and come out one more SO. So I'm just taking it through 2 SOs to really get that tension and that tightness that I want. I'm then going to step up by taking the thread coming out of the bottom of that SO bead and go through the top in the opposite direction, just like I did on the first pass, and that is going to tighten that up and get me ready for my next rotation. The next time that I'm coming around here, I'm going to be adding an SO bead and then a spiky button and then an SO, and that's going to be between each of these SO beads that are already in place. So right away it's going to be an SO, a spike, an SO. So through the next SO in line, and that's the pattern the whole way around this one here. So again, I have my SO, spiky button, SO, and into the previous row of SOs into that empty top hole. As you're doing this, you want to make sure to pull tight, and you also want to push your SOs up to the top. Your spiky buttons up to the top. We want to make sure that they're all facing the same direction, because they have a tendency to kind of go whichever direction you're pulling them. So you want to make sure that they are facing upward, because you want them all facing the same direction for your project. So again, I have that SO, spike, SO, sewing through to the next SO bead, making sure that spike is sticking up there, and I'm continuing on. I'm going to add 3 more of the SOs and the spiky buttons, which will finish out this row. I'm going to keep going. I have my second one to add, and we're going to take our thread through then and come out the first of our spiky button beads. I have the last of my spiky button beads on here. Again, I'm going to sew through the SO and the spiky button, and the next SO. So I'm coming out basically that second of the first SO spiky button rotation that I added. Once I have that, I want to make sure to pull this nice and tight, again making sure all my spiky buttons are facing upward, and that's going to pull this kind of in a little bit of a curve. Taking that thread then and stepping up, go through the top hole of the SO that the thread is coming out of in the opposite direction, which we do at each step up, and give a nice tight yank. Next, what we're going to do is add our next and final row here, and what we're going to do for that is above our spiky buttons we're just going to add 4 11-0 seed beads, and other than that, in between the SO beads we're going to add an SO. So to do that here, I'm above a spiky button bead. I'm going to add 4 of my seed beads and sew through the next SO. When I'm in between 2 of my SO beads, I'm going to add another SO. When I'm above the spiky button, I'm going to add 4 more 11s, continuing on, and I do want to pull tightly because I want that little bit of a curvature to make this puffy in nature. Adding another SO bead when I'm above and in between the SO. So you can see we're just increasing and making that little star pattern. So 4 beads go on. This will also hold that spiky button upright. Keep it from turning down, and pull as you go. Again, you're getting a little bit of a doming effect, and it has a little bit of a cupping. Continuing on with my pattern. As I finished here going around adding in those 4 beads and my last little SO bead, what I've done is actually gone through and created kind of a lock by doing a step up. I'm actually taking the needle off at this point and letting the spiky side, which has that nice concave effect there, sit off to the side. First, we have to make the back side, which is going to be done in the exact same fashion, but using the button beads. So I'm going to go around and add my 6 SO beads with the bead in between, put a button in the middle, and then I'm going to add 6 more SO beads with an 11 on each side, step up, and then do my third row, which is going to be my SO, button, SO, going the whole way around. Once we do that, I'll come back to you guys and we'll learn how to finish that one off and connect the two together and then decorate the sides as we work on it. So right now this one's going to set to the side and I'm going to get my needle and I'm going to get ready to do the other side with the button beads, doing it the same fashion that I did with the spiky buttons. So I'm at the point here where I've recreated the same thing with the button beads rather than the spiky buttons, and I've gotten through rows 1, 2, and 3. As I finished row 3 coming through, I went through my starter SO bead of that row and then through the first SO bead that I actually added in the third row. I did a step up here and I'm getting ready to add my 4 beads in and my last SO bead. Previously, when we did the first side, we did our 4 beads and then we added an SO. When we do this side here, we're actually going to use the SO from the previous side to create and finish off our little diamond there. I am going to add my 4 beads in between my button beads, which are just going to make that nice curvature adding. So to do this, I'm coming out of one of the SO beads and I'm going to pick up any SO on the other side, it doesn't matter, that last SO bead through the second hole. I'm then going to sew through the SO on the flat side, and that is going to link the two together. So it links the two together right there. In between that, I'm going to add my 4 of my 11 seed beads and sew through the next SO in line right above my flat button bead. After I add those, it's time to go through the SO from the other side. And then also back through the next SO in line. So you're basically rotating from one side to the other, trying not to get the tails caught up there. Just adding 4 beads and then linking on to the previous SO bead from the other side. Once you have that in, again 4 more beads, and so right along the line. So you're going through adding your 4 beads. The thread keeps getting caught on those spikes. You're going to go through adding the 4 beads at a time, and then at each intersection here above the SOs, linking in to the SO from the previous project, that little spiky side. Once that's added, with the needle going through it and coming back through to the SO that's already on the flat side. So you're basically just sewing the two sides together, and then in between adding the 4 beads. I'm going to continue sewing up this little moon here and adding those 4 beads at a time. As I went through seaming up the sides now, I have my beads in place with my SO beads on the one side, and then if I flip over, I've got the other pendant on the other side. What I'm going to do now is decorate a little bit with 15 O's just to get a little bit more of a look. How I'm going to decorate with my 15 O's is I'm going to use those to create a little bit of a V. I'm going to come out of my 11O here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 beads and then connect to my button bead. So I'm on my bright side here, so I'm going to use my 2 pink beads. So I have my 2 pink beads in here. I'm going to sew down into the button. come out there. That's going to also push the button forward. See, it just does that little hint of pink. 2 more go on. I'm going to sew through then that last 11 through the SO. When I come out the SO there, the one that's joined, I'm going to use another one of my 15-0 seed beads, sew through to the next SO. And that's going to make that bright pink in there. Again, through my first 11-0, add 2 beads, pick up on that flat button there, bring my needle out, make sure that button bead sits right there at the top, add 2 more 15s, back through that 11, back through the SO, and then when you're on the side of the SO here, that sits right near the other one, you're going to add 1 15. I'm going to go through the whole project, both sides, this first side with the bright pink, and then the second side I'm going to do with that blue color. It's going to make sure that all those spiky buttons kind of sit up, and the flat buttons as well, and also make it very much reversible, that it has that polar action going on with the bright pink on one side and that blue color on the other. Now that I have both sides decorated with that V pattern going in the pink towards the buttons and the greenish blue towards the spiky buttons, I'm going to get ready to actually do a bail. So I still have the ends, and what I did was put a needle back on the one that had the longest end, since we used one for one side and one for the other. What I'm going to do is I'm actually coming out of my set of 4 seed beads, and I'm going to go ahead in and I'm going to actually add 4 more seed beads. You can choose which color you're going to want to do this. I'm going to do it just in my blue color, and in a ladder step fashion I'm going to sew back through all 4 of those blue seed beads. Once I'm through those 4 blue seed beads, I'm going to go ahead and sew back through the 4 that I just added, and I'm going to add 4 more. After I add those 4, I'm going to sew back through the previous 4 in a circular fashion, doing this ladder stitch. Pull it nice and tight. Sew back through the 4 that I just added, and that's going to increase it. I'm going to go ahead and do this about 5 more times, adding more to my ladder stitch. Once I have those 7 rows of ladder stitch completed, I'm going to go to the opposite side to my purple beads here. Whatever side the thread is on, I'm going to go through those 4 beads on the opposite side, weaving into those and coming out on the other side. It might be getting tight there. You can see if you want to switch to a size 12 needle, you can. I'm stubborn and I'm just going to use my 10 here. And I'm going to thread or curl that back a little bit just so I have that end there. I'm going to go back then through the last 4 beads that were previously added on that ladder stitch and give it a nice tight pull. That's going to actually finish the bail off. So I have a nice bail there to hang my little spiky beaded here pendant. So the spiky button, this polar moon pendant here, you could really hang on either side. The buttons aren't super spiky, they'll be able to sit, and then you have the spiky side facing up. What you want to do is then just tie off and finish off the threads by ending them together and pulling them back. If you want to, you can tie them off in the project itself, or you can tie them off exactly where they to where they connect. So that's up to you. I'm just reinforcing my clasp a little bit here, going back through that ladder stitch here, and then I'll tie off on the side and actually just knot it right on the side of the pendant. Once you're done with your pendant, you have a 2-sided fun pendant to wear. You have the spiky buttons on one side and the flat buttons on the other, with a color mix as well. You could really change up the color by doing different colors of SOs. Rather than a dull and a bright silver, you could do a purple and a green on one side, or change up the look a lot. You can make the bezel, which is just a simple ladder stitch, different lengths and different sizes based on the cording that you're putting it on. I have just for show here a piece of twisted bead-along wire, and this is an 18 gauge wire here. And it looks really pretty on that too, just showing off both sides. Even though the spiky buttons are spiky, they're soft enough that they can go against the skin and you won't have any problem. You could wear the pendant on that side. If you need any of the materials for this, you can go back to the beginning of the video, or you can go to the little drop-down menu underneath the video here. There's the show more details underneath the description. Click on that and you can get all the materials that were used in this video. You can take that to your local Potomac Bead Company store, or you can shop with me online at potomacbeads.com. We're happy to send you out all the fun new products like the SOs and the spiky buttons and the buttons coming out of the Czech Republic that we're importing in for you guys to play with, have fun, and create. If you get a chance, enjoy playing with these fun new beads, and you can also be more interactive with us on Facebook. Check out and preview some of the new videos that we're doing, the product updates, as well as subscribe to this channel. If you want to follow us on Facebook, we have our regular Potomac Beads, and then we also have a Facebook chat group that you can join, which is Beading and Jewelry Making. And you can chat there, show different pictures and ideas and the fun things that you guys are making as well. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and as always, have fun and happy beading and create fun, unusual products with some of the great new things that we carry.